We have breaking news out of the Middle East. The U.S. has launched airstrikes in retaliation for an attack on a U.S. base in Jordan that killed 3 soldiers. Let's bring in national security and global affairs reporter for NBC News' investigative unit, Dan DeLuce, at the Pentagon. Dan?
Yes, defense officials are telling us that the retaliatory airstrikes have begun in Iraq and Syria against Iranian-backed militias, something that obviously the White House has been warning they would do. It has now begun. This operation has been pretty clearly now telegraphed for days, since 3 U.S. soldiers were killed in Jordan in that drone attack on Sunday. And now this operation has begun. And keep in mind, administration officials have made it clear that this is not a one-off, that this will extend beyond today, over days. It will be a campaign, and it will involve multiple strikes and other operations. But right now we can say that the retaliatory strikes have begun in Iraq and Syria against those Iranian-backed militias that have launched more than 160 attacks on U.S. forces since October 7th, since that war started between Israel and Hamas.
Dan, do we have any further details on the targets in Iraq and in Syria?
They are not releasing those details yet. But judging by, keep in mind, we've had previous airstrikes in the past, more limited airstrikes, against those militias, and they tend to go after weapons depots. They go after different sites used by the militias, including command and control sites, anywhere where they believe they can degrade the capability of these militias, which, of course, as we know, are financed.
I don't get why you're in favor of bombing the Houthis but not the Iranians. Because I think that defending international maritime trade, if done effectively, is like an international interest. It's not even about American interest. Like, the entire world needs it. That being said, like, the continued back and forthing between U.S. service members and Iranian-backed militias is an inevitable and endless consequence of our occupation in the Middle East. Like, this, there is no way around this. There are 2 ways around this, and it's either we leave or we nuke Iran into oblivion, which hopefully we're not going to do. You know, I'd really rather take the former route, but as long as we're there and Iran is there, this is going to keep happening over and over and over and over and over again.
It's trained and armed by Iran and have been a thorn in the side.
Would you admit bombing the Houthis is a bad idea now? No. Again, like that's independent. You know, you cannot have like regional movements attacking civilian shipping vessels anytime they have an axe to grind. You can't do it. You can't have that. Can't have that. The world must descend on those that threaten the Funko Pop commerce lines. We need the Amazon Prime, the backbone of modern civilization, must continue.
Of the U.S. forces there for years, but of course there is no indication at the moment that the U.S. is taking any action inside Iranian territory. So
the
these
spice must flow.
Are taking place in Iraq and Syria, where those militia groups are based and where they operate. But of course, there's a challenge here. Once the U.S. warned that it would respond to that drone attack, that has given the militias time to evacuate and to hide and conceal them.
Why can't the U.S. just negotiate with Iran? Because we backed ourselves into a corner, kind of. I mean, with Donald Trump reneging on the nuclear accords and justifiably making Iran extremely angry for just, like, dropping an agreement we had with them, they don't really have any reason to trust us, you know?
Weapons and their capabilities.
Dan, as you described, as officials have described, this is likely to be a tiered approach. Your sense of what that might look like?
I think we're going to see a much larger scale of airstrikes than we've seen up until now, right? Until now, they were quite limited, quite calibrated over the past few months. This is going to be a much larger scale, involving a lot more aircraft, a lot more missiles, dozens of targets, I would guess, judging by what they've been indicating in advance. And then keep in mind, too, at some point, I think it's fair to assume there will be strikes at sea, or excuse me, against the Houthis in Yemen, who've been attacking those commercial ships in the Red Sea. And
those, the Straw Hat
We have no
crew.
indication there are any operations right now targeting the Houthis in Yemen at the moment. But I think it's fair to assume that that will come as part of this multi-tiered campaign as they're describing it.
Joining us now, retired four-star general and MSNBC military analyst
Trump assassinating Soleimani was one of the worst actions of his presidency. Oh, unironically, yeah, for sure. It basically like made any kind of diplomacy with Iran impossible, at least for the near future. You know, Soleimani was beloved by the population. He was a hero to many of the Iranian people. Just up and murking him, you know, does not dispose us positively towards those people. Are you prepared to admit your take on drugs and weed caused this airstrike campaign? Yeah, all this is being informed. Biden also hasn't decriminalized marijuana. Coincidence? Not really. Vaush Soleimani wasn't liked. Yeah, he was. He wasn't like the unambiguous 100% hero that some people paint him as. I mean, you know, he wasn't like, I don't know, Mr. Rogers to the Iranian people, but he was an extremely prominent, respected, you know, and highly thought of leader. As has been pointed out about the American psyche, Americans have no real life heroes. What was the who was it who said that there was some Iranian who said we would kill an American celebrity in response, but who would we? SpongeBob, Spider-Man? The Americans have no heroes, which is kind of true. Like there aren't really any people in American government who are just beloved by the people. That's not really a thing that America has. America is too partisan, and also our leadership is too ineffective, you know, for the most part. We endure constant gridlock. That's a good thing. I actually think it's an extremely bad thing. I think it's good for societies to have heroes. If a society can't have heroes, that either means that, like, it's too polarized to produce them, or the circumstances are so dire that nobody can rise to the occasion. You know, I think it's important to have just, like, you know, broadly respected and effective, you know, figures in society or government or whatever else. But we don't have them. So there's not really much of a comparison. Do you mean strongmen or heroes? When did I say strongmen? Why would I say... Do I mean strongmen or heroes? I said hero every time. When did I say strongman? When would that be the thing that I said? Do you mean we need heroes or Hitlers? I misheard you. What? I'm not so sure about that. Vaush, heroes create cults of personality. Everyone creates cults of personality. All leaders do. I'm not talking about like no, whatever. You can project your own whatever onto what I said. The idea that a hero is a bad thing is again, this is like an American disease. I'm moving on.
General McCaffrey, what are you looking for as this story develops?
Well, I think since the strike on Tower 22 with a pretty significant U.S. casualties, three killed in action, more than 50 now reporting wounded in action. U.S. intelligence has been blanketing the region, trying to see where the threats are. They are moving. They're all trying to disguise themselves. They've turned off.
This guy looks like an elf. Look at his ears.
The Houthis have turned off their radars in particular, but we've been watching them moving. So I won't think that we have lost much in terms of delaying multiple days. If anything, we've added to it because they get them up and running. As Dan very accurately reported, this is going to be a multi-week probably response, hopefully decentralized. It will involve both U.S. Navy and Air Force power. There may well be classified aspects to it. In other words, Delta Force going into Syria or other places and snatching some of these leaders. Never mind cyber warfare and economic action. So, as Secretary Austin stated, we got to degrade capabilities and not just do a one-off campaign.
To your point about what Defense Secretary Austin said yesterday, he said specifically, it's time to take away.
This is like a lesson we keep getting forced to learn over and over and over again. We're not interested in learning it. You can't defeat insurgency. It's not possible. You can't bomb insurgency into non-existence. We couldn't beat the Taliban. You know, the Taliban took Afghanistan back the nanosecond that we left. We never beat it in Vietnam. The Soviets couldn't beat it in Afghanistan, you know? It just doesn't work. The only reason there's been any effectiveness in pushing back against ISIS in the Middle East is because ISIS is so monstrous and so easy to hate that they don't do a very good job of embedding themselves in the population, you know? ISIS is, I guess, I don't know, toxic or caustic enough that they don't have the ability in many cases to kind of blend into the people in you know, in the countryside as well as like the Taliban does, you know. So we can bomb all of these Iranian-backed militias all we want. We're not doing anything.
Even more capability than we've taken in the past. Give us a sense of scope. What might that look like?
Well, it's the toughest target is still the Houthis, the Red Sea, enormous economic consequences. It's affecting world trade. It's driving up prices. The Egyptians remain mute with their Suez.
I agree with the bombing of the Houthis, but aren't they just insurgents of the Red Sea? No, the Houthis effectively are the government of Yemen. They control the vast majority of the population. They're not an insurgency. They operate as a government. Also, like, we're not trying to defeat... The point of striking them isn't to defeat the insurgency there, even if there was one. It's to keep them from doing random piracy, you know? With Yemen, they control, like, the territory that contains 80% the population of Yemen. They control the power... They control the important part of Yemen. You're correct, but to be fair, the British defeated insurgency in Malaysia?
Suez Canal losing revenue. So what you do about the Houthis is hard to program. You know, you got about a third of the country. It's a Shia militia organization, very closely allied with Iran. It's got some...
Malaya back then, now Malaysia? Another gap in my knowledge. Today, at my direction, U.S. military forces struck targets in Iraq and Syria that the IRGC and affiliated militia used to attack U.S. forces. We do not seek conflict in the Middle East or anywhere else in the world, but to all those who seek to do us harm, we will respond, which guarantees inevitable conflict, because as long as we're here, we will inflame, like, insurgent response to our presence, which means that we'll always be doing this back and forth forever and ever 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 and ever. Nice.
Fairly significant weapon.
Guys, just one more decade of Middle Eastern occupation, guys. Guys, just one more guys, trust me, bro. We only need one more decade of being stationed in the Middle East, okay? Just one more, and we'll finally be done.
Ballistic and drone missiles, and it definitely can strike in this very constrained waterway, international shipping. That one's a real challenge. I think the terrorist organizations in both Syria and Iraq, it'll have to be over time. We'll just have to watch for them. Every time they move, they'll get struck. But even there, we have a...
It's like the U.S. wants Iran to have nukes. Yeah, Iran is probably going to have nuclear weapons, possibly more than one, within the decade. And after that, I don't know what we're going to do. Like, once they have nukes, like, it's, you know, in all likelihood, assuming we even have a democracy within which people will be debating the issue, you know, there are going to be people screaming that we need to invade them now because the one nuke they have isn't big enough to, like, end the world, so we have to go in now or whatever. Vaush, quit the hyperbole. We're not starting an invasion or occupation. You're right, we're not starting an invasion or an occupation. We're continuing an occupation. That is correct. The military bases that we're getting struck in have been there for decades. Yeah, we're not starting anything. Nothing here is new. That being said, once Iran does have nuclear weapons, there are going to be voices screaming out for us to, like, invade now, like, before they get a second one or whatever. One nuke doesn't do that much damage, after all, and with modern anti-air defense systems, it's reasonably likely that a single missile could be stopped, or at least there's a chance of it, so hey, might as well go in now where they only have one. If you wait for them to get 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 or 100, then it's going to be a lot harder.
Unusual problem. Iraq vehemently opposes any U.S. military action inside Iraq. We're there, 2,500 troops, with part of a international coalition, counter ISIS in nature, at the request of the Iraqi government. So
Iran is not going for nukes, but they are. Let's be realistic here. U.S. intelligence assessment says Iran is not pursuing nuclear weapons at the moment, but has ramped up activities that could help it develop them. They're literally building like a deep, like under the mountain, top secret nuclear facility, you know? Like it's difficult for them to actually get on the process because Mossad assassinating their scientists. Yeah, of course, but that's because the current Iraqi government isn't really popular or legitimate, you know? Like we kind of prop them up. The current Iraqi government, obviously, if we prop a government up, they're going to want us to stay because we're the might that keeps them from toppling. But that's the whole point, right? We can't just go in and prop up a government. We tried to do this in Afghanistan. The ANA just fled. All of the Afghan army dudes were like little boys and embezzling money, and then the moment we leave, they either die instantly to the Taliban or they flee and they take their millions of dollars to some other country and live out the rest of their lives there, you know? Like you just can't do it. You can't just build a proxy country. Like it just doesn't work that way, you know? The process of meaningfully building up a state is incredibly difficult. That's not fair. Some of them joined the Taliban. Yes, that's true. Some of them joined the Taliban. That's true. The real dogs. What about the Kurdish in Syria? Yeah, that's a difficult thing. But like again, what about all the people who got taken over by the Taliban? Right? Our removing ourselves from the situation will lead to people getting hurt. It would suck to lose Rojava. I feel like the best thing we could do for them would be to get Turkey's hands off of them. You know, like if there was some way of just like incredibly harsh diplomacy with Turkey to get them to fuck off, because I feel like there's a decent chance that Rojava could actually hold its own if it wasn't for Turkey, right? Like the Syrian army clearly can't just wipe out Rojava, obviously, and they've been very effective against ISIS too. And it's unlikely that Iran would like be the amount of proxy weapons and investment in lives it would take to defeat Rojava without directly invading Syria, which Iran wouldn't do for a variety of reasons. It's too much. The only real threat to Rojava, like at least in terms of an immediate collapse, is Turkey. You know? Well, to be fair, Thana, they have their own very strong military, much stronger than they have any right to have, I feel. We prop them up. To an extent, but they're doing quite well, you know, proportionally for themselves. Turkey also funds jihadist militias. Well, Erdogan is evil, so, you know. Well, we'll see what happens after Iran gets their nukes. Iran is pursuing research and development activities that would bring it closer to producing the fissile material needed for completing a nuclear device following a decision to do so. Well, there you go. In that regard, Iran continues to violate the terms of the 2015 nuclear deal regarding uranium enrichment. Why would they follow it after we withdrew? Iran continues to increase the size and enrichment level of its uranium stockpile beyond JCPOA limits, the report said, adding that it continues to exceed. Why would they follow this? Why would they follow the agreement? We made the deal and then left. Why? How is that them? We broke the contract. In addition to the nuclear findings, the U.S. intel report said that Iranian ballistic missile programs continue to pose a significant threat to countries around the Middle East. Iran has emphasized improving the accuracy, lethality, and reliability of its missiles, it said. Nice. Yeah, Annie, but I don't think that the ability to stop ICBMs is necessarily a technology we want, right? Mutually assured destruction is kind of the thing that kept the Cold War from going hot. Nice to see the Supreme Leader Ayatollah practicing good COVID mask, mask restrictions. That's nice. You got the Fauci ouchie. Why doesn't the Syrian rebellion work with Rojava? Okay, no. Very much like we taught this monkey to understand the politics of the various insurgency groups in Syria and it killed itself. Material right there, okay? Why does anything in Syria? I don't know, okay? I follow Rojava, Assad bad, you know, I know some stuff. The complexities of the relationships of these different groups are extensive and somewhat beyond me.
You know, Secretary Blinken, who's made every effort to try and keep this conflict from escalating, is now facing renewed challenges. The good news, we're not going into Iran with strikes yet.
General McCaffrey, can you give us a sense of how you...
Yet. I sure hope we don't. It would be bad if we did that.
...define success with a mission like this?
Well, that's the $64 million question for sure. I think that to some extent, you simply have to respond. I've been really distraught.
Well, thanks. A good question. What does success look like in this instance? And his response after 15 seconds of waffling is, well, you have to. I mean, you can't not bomb Syria. You can't. What does success look like, bro? You sorry? Are you implying there was any timeline where we didn't do this? You know, like wait. We don't. Do we need a reason?
Listening to people say, well, now they've killed some U.S. soldiers. Now we got to act. We've had 160 some odd strikes on U.S. forces.
Keep in mind, a lot of these strikes are incredibly ineffective, which is the reason why only now there have been deaths. Like, a strike will be some Iranian-backed militia will fire a bottle rocket and it'll land a quarter mile from the outermost fence of the base. You know, it's there's a reason we haven't been hearing about service deaths prior to this.
You simply cannot take away the inherent right of self-defense and immediate action and decentralized responses.
Oh, great. So he doesn't have it. So he's not even going to answer the question, what does success look like? He's just going to be like, we have a right to defend ourselves. Literally the Zionist answer, you know? Yeah, well, you gotta, you know. What does success look like? Is there any good outcome here? Outcomes. Outcomes. We're just doing it, man.
If you're going to keep military forces deployed in such a dangerous environment. So hopefully
Why do we do that then?
Those days are behind us, and we'll now have a more active protection of the forces themselves.
You mean striking first? Look at snaky and Holden Bloodfeast ass mother. Like, you know, it's like everything that he says is just coded like hawkish militarism. I mean, obviously, right? But just, you know, it's not even sincere.
But the important question you raise is, what is the strategic purpose for these deployments?
What does success actually look like in this scenario? It doesn't. This scenario is doomed to fail. I just want to see him admit it. He won't, but I'll get mad at him for it. You know, like you could say it's also an unwinnable situation for him. But there is no success in this scenario.
And we're going to have to rethink that, because bombing militia units and Shia militia units in Iraq is not a long-term solution to anything.
Well, give us a sense of what those conversations look like when you're...
What he's saying is we need to bomb Iran. Look at this guy. This guy's going blind. Like, this guy's dying live in front of the camera. Please, let me see burning flesh one last time before I die. Please, God.
Talking about strategic purpose, that is something that is constantly evaluated and reevaluated. You have been in the rooms where those conversations happen. Give us a sense. How frequently are they happening? How many times will they happen in the next few days? What are the data points?
Vaush, what do you think Biden should do in response to the killing of our soldiers there? Iran puts us in an extraordinary difficult position. We put Iran in a difficult position. Why do we have so many bases there? Why did we invade Iraq and Afghanistan? We need to leave. I'm sorry, there's no like politically easy solution to this, especially right now, you know, but like, holy shit, like this is just going to keep happening over and over and over again. The most charitable answer that I could come up with is just that withdrawing, you know, the process of broader withdrawal and detente in the region would be politically unpopular, and Biden wouldn't do it until after winning in 2024, winning this upcoming presidential. But even assuming he does do that, I don't think he's actually going to go through with it. So whatever. It's just like an infinite, like it's just nothing gets solved, you know?
They will be looking for.
Well, that national security...
Hot take, America should have never left Afghanistan or Iraq. Yeah, hot, like a big steaming pile of shit. That's true.
Council meets at various levels of officialdom, you know, from the 3-star Pentagon level, is whole of government, State Department, Treasury, Department of Homeland Security, all of them are involved. This is going on day and night, 7 days a week, trying to manage really the top current defense challenge to the United States. By the time an issue gets to the NSC, there are no good options. Everything you're considering has unpalatable implications. What happens after we take this action? That's why I think wisely they're publicly signaling we're not going to go after Iran yet. Iran is the centerpiece orchestrating, funding, training, equipping, and to some extent directing what is a regional war against U.S. and Israeli interests, and part of the domination of the Sunni Muslim population. So it's not going to go away with this current air campaign. We're in a long-term, complex, dangerous situation that we have to face up to.
What is this oh poor Iran dialogue from Vaush? No one in the Middle East likes them. Lol, the Iranian government is not some hero in the Middle East. What the fuck are you talking about? No, what arguments are you projecting onto me? I don't even know what you're responding to. Oh poor Iran? This is just about we shouldn't have like indefinite military occupation of the region when it clearly does nothing but exacerbate conflict. Like, but that has nothing to do with oh poor Iran.
General McCaffrey, there is, of course, always in these situations a question of proportionality. How does the Biden administration decide what is a proportional response? How do they make that decision, that determination?
Well, I hope they're deciding on a disproportional response. I mean, that's a problem. If you get one lousy drone.
You think there's an Iranian guy saying the same shit the opposite way around, Vaush, on Iranian TV? Yeah, that's not even speculative or whatever. Yeah, you can just look at that. Absolutely. Iran has for decades now based a lot of it. Well, the Iranian government has based a lot of its legitimacy on fear-mongering over American intervention in the Middle East. Legitimate fear-mongering because we did that. We did do that. That's not, American intervention in the Middle East isn't like a fantasy or whatever. That is a real thing that we did and do. Yeah. And they're right to. You know what? As bad as the Iranian government is, the broader proxy military war they fight against us is realistically, given the situation, given realpolitik, probably the most base thing they could do. Keep in mind their country, we squatted on them until the Iranian Revolution. We've killed their leaders. We've backed out of our deals. We've broken our contracts with them. We have invaded and occupied. We've built military bases all around the region. We've put pressure on them. Our politicians scream bloody murder about invading Iran, and they have been for decades. All of that, and anyone thinks it's a surprise that they're funding, militia groups that are largely grassroots and poor Islamic jihadists, anti-Western military forces fighting against regional interests, given everything going on over there. Yeah, of course that's going to happen, It's you'd have to be like a child with the naivete to believe elsewise, our presence there wasn't going to inflame tensions constantly. The only way through this is to leave, and maybe if we do and tensions settle, we can talk things out with Iran. The people of Iran want a better government. We might be able to facilitate that. Until then, all we're doing is making the Iranian government's point for them by being the monsters they claim we are. Vaush, would you support an immediate pullout of our forces from the Middle East right now, even if it caused a total collapse in Biden's approval ratings that guarantees Trump comes back? The alternative would be... See, the problem with this is this argument would work well in a vacuum if we didn't know for a fact that any U.S. president following Biden, or if Biden gets reelected, whatever, isn't going to continue the same policy. Unfortunately, it is just politically damaging to do good Middle Eastern policy. Good foreign policy in the Middle East will make you unpopular. So no matter when I say this or in what context, there's always going to be that argument, But past a point, you have to look beyond that. You have to put the pressure on. And publicly being anti-Middle East intervention, that is one of the ways you can make it less politically unpopular, Think of how much more isolationist America pretends to be today than it did 20 years ago. Nowadays, the American population would have no patience whatsoever for boots on the ground invasion unless something really wacky happened. A lot of that is because the sort of burnout from the Iraq and Afghan wars have sort of negatively polarized Americans against the idea of continued Middle Eastern intervention. One of the ways you do that is by being loud and obnoxious about how bad our presence there is, which is what I'm doing. Biden's not going to listen to me, right? He doesn't watch my streams, to my knowledge. I wish he did. He'd be, a better president. I can't force policy here, but I do want people to know there is no good version of events where we stay in the Middle East. That's what I want. That's what I'm doing right now. To all the liberals who watch me, to all the people, all the Canadians who got mad at me for thinking Trudeau was unjustified in freezing bank assets of protesters, even if the protesters were nasty, to all the liberals who think that Biden is doing the best job he can, who think that my statements on Israel and genocide are overstated or whatever, whoever you may be, you treacherous snakes, okay? I just want you to know, None of this like contrarian, ooh, I think actually, if we had only stayed in Afghanistan for a little while longer, things might have worked out. No. No, 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 no. Off with that. Every day on Twitter, I see some weird liberal, like social democrat contrarianism where they're like, actually, the Iraq war wasn't that bad of an idea. It was just poorly executed. There is no good execution of these ideas, you know? You're not God. You're not 400 APM StarCraft 2 Pro, okay? You can't micromanage any invasion and occupation of the Middle East, all right? Things play out how they play out, and we have an incredibly strong, reliable, repeatable formula proving to us that every fucking time we meddle around down there, we make things worse. So let's stop. Let's stop doing that. Let's stop. Let's stop. Let's stop. Let it be over. It's time to stop. How about our intervention in Libya against Gaddafi? Yeah, that went really well.
Maybe a 300-kilogram warhead on it that slams into a sleeping area and causes 50 some odd U.S. casualties.
Then what? The entire region explodes due to the power vacuum? It's not a power vacuum. Wait, do you think there's like no other forces in the Middle East? Like it's just a barren wasteland that we squat in? What do you mean vacuum? Iran, Saudi Arabia. It's not a vacuum. There are things there. A vacuum is defined by an absence of matter in a space. There's matter there. Big matter. Iran is kind of a war hawk in the Middle East. No, they're not. That's not what war hawk means. And some countries need the U.S.'s support to defend themselves against them. No, nope, not our business. Nope. 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 No. Then Ukraine is not your business either. Yes, it is. Because our supplying munitions and support to Ukraine isn't destabilizing the entire region. It's preventing destabilization. Outcomes-based analysis, remember? Our presence in the Middle East has done nothing but perpetuate these issues. Again, 20 years of occupation in Afghanistan, and it bought us nothing. It bought us a few days to flee to the airport when it all fell apart. Do you have any idea how bad that is? Do you have any idea how ineffective that makes us? So we should only help the countries that are useful to us? What the fuck are you talking about? I said our presence in or involvement in the Ukraine war produces good outcomes, and our involvement in the Middle East produces bad outcomes. What does this have to do with countries that are useful to us? You're all like 17. Where's this attachment coming from? I point to the formula, chat. Western intervention in the Middle East produces bad outcomes. Like consistently. I don't know how many examples you need. There are a couple of times we've done stuff there that's defensible. I think the Gulf War is an example. It's complicated, but I think there's like a defensible element to that, though we f***ed it up in plenty of other ways too. But consistently, our interventions there have just been bad. Why don't we not militarily intervene and rather treat the countries there like regular countries we can do diplomacy with? What we should have been doing with Iran a long time ago. So if the occupation had gone well in Iraq or Afghanistan, they would have been justified. Depending on what you mean by well, yes, because if things go well, that means the outcome was good. And utilitarian moral framework, a good outcome usually means the action was morally good. Yes. I don't understand, Vaush. Like, for example, the whole Houthi movement in Iran is creating unrest in Yemen. Obviously, what the U.S. and the KSA did was put some help there would be nice. Help there? You want us to put boots in the ground in Yemen? Wait. Lily Krem, think for a second what you're talking about, okay? Saudi Arabia has been bombing the Houthis for a decade, and all it did was make more Houthis. No, stop. When you're the global empire, you know, every problem looks like a drone strike target, you know? Calm down. What do you mean? What are we doing to help Yemen? First, we could lift fucking sanctions and let them eat would be nice. Like, what, just invade Yemen? What else? Bangladesh, do you have problems? Invade. I don't know. We'll fix something. Sri Lanka, it's time. Like, why? Why not? We've got money. Vaush, wouldn't withdrawing screw over our defenseless allies like the Saudi monarchy? Unironically, yes. Vaush, again, Vietnam flawlessly proves your point. Look at what occurred there. We have significantly closer ties and a better relationship with them after we left, something that would have never occurred if we stayed forever. No. I think the outcome... Sure, right now we may be close allies with Vietnam, and Vietnam has had an economic boom, and the population there is happier than they have been in a long time. But I think things would have been better if we'd stayed another 50 years, you know? I think that would have worked. We should have just stayed there for 50 years and destabilize the whole region by proxy as we force like Viet Cong soldiers out into adjacent countries, so those countries could be drawn into the civil war forever and ever, and we could just fight forever, and eventually it'll work, you know? Like, seriously, we lost more lives and more money in Vietnam than any of these current wars, and we leave, and what happened to Vietnam? It stabilized! In the absence of America, the great Satan, the pig dog Westerners, you know, KKK crackers, you know, in their absence, things got better. Why are there like 500 John McCains in chat today? I just don't think liberals understand. Like, this is very much like a materialist analysis thing. I don't think a lot of liberals understand that, like, having all the power in the world, which America does not mean you can just solve these problems. Problems like this are built up through a really complicated combination of local material forces, you know? It's the same, it's exactly the same force that made ISIS when we caused a power vacuum by invading Iraq. We made the power vacuum, by the way. And that's what led to ISIS. All of the like hyper radicalized Islamic insurgency shit, ISIS, Boko Haram, a lot of it is downstream of actions we took. We haven't stabilized the region at all. We haven't even like meaningfully corrected a power vacuum. We killed Saddam Hussein, and he was a bastard, don't get me wrong, but now there is a real power vacuum. And now people think we should stay in Iraq and protect them against Iran? Motherfucker, why does Iraq need protection from Iran? Oh, because we killed all of them. Like, we went in there and made them weak. And now we what? We have to stay there and defend the weakened territory that we destroyed against the other regional hegemon? Why? Wouldn't we just be here forever? Like, we've spent over a decade building up a local government. Clearly, it's not very liked or powerful. You know, like, just forever and ever and ever. Doesn't killing them make the U.S. responsible for defending them? No! What? No. Then the problem never fixes. Then it's just forever. If making a mistake earlier doesn't justify making more or like indefinitely committing to them. If we left, folks who have associated with America would risk retaliation. Yeah, well, yeah, if there are specific compromised individuals, then sure, we can give them a flight, you know, over to the States. Sure, we should have done that in Afghanistan more, but yeah. What if you have a case like Syria where Russia intervenes? Should we operate as a counterweight to support Rojava and FSA? I'm just very confused on this. I don't understand what about this is confusing, but look at how fucking weak Syria is. They can't even control, like, the entirety of their own territory. Like, what do you really think Syria is going to be a regional hegemon? They're so incompetently managed, they caused, like, a generational defining refugee crisis. I really don't think that Syria is at risk of disrupting the broader like power vacuum, you know? I mean, it'd be cool to support Rojava, but we should do it legitimately. You know, we should do it through like diplomatic relations, not by just having US bases scattered around the area where we pursue a variety of goals, some of which just happen to align with Rojava. How do you protect critical maritime shipping lanes without a U.S. military presence in the region? Well, we've done it before. I don't understand what's difficult about this. Guys, we are destabilizing the region. That is what is causing these problems. Like, you're literally like scratching a sore on your body. Like, why won't this wound heal? Because you keep scratching it. Like, no shit. Like, you're doing the thing that is making the region like this. And you're like, no, the only way to fix it and to alleviate the consequences of us doing the initial thing is to keep doing the initial thing. Sorry for the questions, man, but do you think countries like the US should get involved in countries to fight stuff like human rights violations? Sure, if there's a broader UN vote or like a coalition unites on some specific issue, yeah, like I think we should have intervened in Rwanda, the Rwandan genocide. Yeah, 100%. Like that was an instance where we probably could have had like a bunch of you know, UN planes land in an airport and like spread out to sort of like stabilize a region and minimize the slaughter to an extent. You know, yeah, I'm not saying that I'm opposed to that necessarily, but that's not what we're doing here. Should we exercise more soft power in the region or just be totally hands off? We just do diplomacy, just regular diplomacy would be nice. Shouldn't we invade Pakistan instead? Sure, if you want to, sure. Vaush, that just means any country that's friends with a member of the UN Security Council just gets to commit genocide. They can just block the vote. That's not always what happens, but yes, potentially that is a weakness in the UN. Like, it's not like I'm a fan of the UN. Like, I think there are instances where it can be justified. You can get some kind of multilateral agreement. Okay, do we do it? Have we addressed all of the John McCain's in chat?
Casualties.
Emergency Octopus, you have been spamming shit. I stop. I responded to you, 2 of your messages. You cannot monopolize the responses. Okay, no. Your liberalism has to be corrected through prayer and meditation. I recommend candles and incense, all right? I would rather, even if it led to Iran conquering a ton of territory, I would rather we leave. Much in the same way that the Taliban are objectively worse for Afghanistan than the ANA in a lot of ways. But I would still prefer they be there, because the Middle East can never heal unless it be left to resolve the dialectic on its own. As long as we're like, but leaving the United States in the Middle East to address these issues is like leaving a knife in a wound to keep it from bleeding when you pull it out. You know, you can't begin to heal the injury until you've removed the weapon. Like it's like, oh well, when you remove the knife, it begins to bleed. That has to happen for it to heal. You're not supposed to pull something out that got stuck to you. You should wait for doctors. We are the doctor. It is Dr. Vaush, and I am removing the knife from the Middle East. Let Iran take, mashallah, Iran, take all the land. I don't care. Take Iraq. Who cares? The Iran-Iraq war will finally now, part 2, it'll last 5 days. I don't care. A new caliphate. Let's go.
That drone probably cost $20,000 to manufacture.
Oh my God. Is this in contradiction to your position in the recent past about the sanctity of global shipping lanes? No. No contradiction whatsoever. You can protect global shipping lanes while also removing U.S. intervention in the Middle East.
The people that fired it may have been a dozen people. None of them would say.
It's a question of proportionality. How does the Biden administration decide what is a proportional response? How do they make that decision, that determination?
Well, I hope they're deciding on a disproportional response.
Oh, right.
I mean, that's a problem. If you get one lousy drone, maybe a 300-kilogram warhead on it that slams into a sleeping area and causes 50 some odd U.S. casualties.
It seems contradictory to your position on intervention, but the state of our occupation in the Middle East is so bad, utilitarianism overrides America's desire to make things better. What are you waffling about? What? Our continued presence in the Middle East makes things bad, so we should leave. I don't know. I don't. You're waffling. I don't understand. At whose behest are those attacks on the shipping lanes occurring? Emergency Octopus, the thing that bothers me about you is that you're being awfully smug for somebody who's wrong. And that's usually something that's my domain, okay? That's my shit. And you're cramping my style right now, okay? Wow, no shit, the Houthis are Iran back? That's crazy. You really, so what? You think that if Iran took advantage of America's absence in the Middle East, what? You think they would start antagonizing the world further? Use your brain. First of all, Iran doesn't directly control the Houthis, though obviously there's a good degree of control there. Leaving aside the opportunistic nature of the Houthis, you could continue to defend the shipping lanes while also removing ourselves from the Middle East broadly, and if they continue to engage in that behavior, don't you think that it would make Iran and the Houthis look a little bit bad internationally for them to continue that behavior in spite of the fact that we had just engaged in an unprecedented withdrawal? Don't you think that Iran is like, I don't know, a nation state with interests in trade and deliberation and diplomacy that might be hampered somewhat by engaging in behavior that continues the destabilization? This is the arrogance of you liberals that I can't stand. It's one thing with groups like the Houthis or Hezbollah, which are part pseudo-state, part militia, but Iran is a fucking country. Iran is a nation. They have diplomats. They're not like a group of wacky idiots. There's tens of millions of people there. They have iPhones. It's not like you think that if we leave, they'll just do bad things. Why do they do bad things? Why does anyone do bad things? It's not magic, you know. There are incentive structures here. Our continued presence there makes the Iranian government worse. You realize that, right? Like in every other instance this has happened, wow, the constant ongoing threat of military occupation, invasion, or antagonization from a larger foreign entity increases the likelihood that both people in Iran and the Iranian government will use that fear-mongering rhetoric to further radicalize their population. Why would they care about looking bad internationally if there are no consequences? See, you don't think they're a country. You just think they're evil. You think that Iran, there's like a tapestry of complicated incentive structures and motivations that lead Iran. Iran right now is acting in its own rational self-interest. Iran is not being super wacky, crazy, wahoo, wacky Joker makeup. Iran is acting in its rational self-interest. How on earth would it be in its own rational self-interest to continue to attack internationally vital infrastructure through proxy, by the way, after having obtained the huge foreign policy goal that it's been pushing for decades? In what way would that benefit it? I mean, if they did, then we could just send ships down to the Red Sea again. But our presence there clearly isn't stopping the Houthis from doing this. So, like, what's the relationship? Vaush, why do you hate liberals so much when we're supposed to be our allies in the election? You are fair weather friends, if ever there were any. Also, you're the one contradicting yourself with a non-interventionist stance. How? What is contradictory here? What? No, the rational liberal, your ban, or not ban, I suppose, is up on the line. So I want this directly from you. What contradiction have I made? And you'd better be a good one. I don't want you to just throw off two things, okay? I want you to explain a direct, logical contradiction. I'll wait. Thank you. They wouldn't have to attack. They would effectively be stewards of the entire shipping lane, controlling what goes in or out. Stop calling me a liberal. It makes me sad. Whoa! You're telling me Yemen would have control over ships passing through area that is effectively theirs? You mean like what Egypt does? Or like what Panama does? How is that weird in any way? I'll wait. I feel like chatters forget Iran does not have total control over the actions of the militias they fund and support. Yeah, of course, but also, like, broadly speaking, I just don't think they understand why these militias are doing what they're doing. Okay, you're saying we should protect international trade and also don't intervene when actors kill U.S. troops defending those lanes? The troops that were killed were in Jordan, not the Red Sea. The troops that were killed were on a U.S. military base miles and miles and miles inland. There's no relationship. That base existed long before the Houthis attacked ships in the Red Sea. Yes, because we were bombing Houthis. Then there's no contradiction whatsoever. If those bases existed beforehand, then the presence of those bases and the antagonization that our presence offers has nothing to do at all with our ability to strike the Houthis. Even without Yemen, Iran controls the Hormuz Strait, which is also critical in shipping from Asia to Europe, so the liberal argument fails on two levels. No, to the Hormuz Strait, don't let the Iranians know that, because once the Iranians learn that they control that, it's all going to be Durka Muhammad Jihad over there, and they're going to put on them and their crazy towel hats, and they're going to go, wow, we are evil, death to America, blah, 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 blah. And they're going to shoot up a bunch of boats and stuff, because there's just, because that's what they're like. Iran doesn't have real people in it. Iran is just, it's just wacky. It's all just like America should spend indefinite time there to civilize these Middle Easterners. I feel I'm getting liberal pilled. That's it. The reason why the Iranian-backed militias in the Middle East do what they do is because they're evil. We never did anything wrong, and we're still not doing anything wrong. They're evil, And it's just a coincidence that these militias form, in many cases independently, from dozens of communities, nations, even crossing the Sunni-Shiite line consistently all across the Middle East, with the reliability of, a massive semi-continent-wide hatred of the United States. An irrational one, obviously, because we didn't do anything. We didn't do anything. Not to attack your position, just asking for an elaboration. What should America do if someone like Egypt says no trade through their canal? I mean, I think that the viability of international trade and making it as efficient as possible is very important. And I think there are definitely ways we could incentivize the Egyptian government to let us through. We could do the same with anything, right? I mean, it's like Egypt gets paid for operating the Suez. It's their canal. Egypt could not shut down the Suez. It would be a violation of international law. There is already international law that secures many like maritime passageways, including, as I understand it, through the Red Sea past Yemen. There is an international interest in protecting those shipping lanes, which again means that the world could defend it, not just America. By the way, don't you think it makes America look a little bit bad that we were the ones to send ships over there, even though, again, like legally, the whole world should be involved? I mean, Operation Prosperity Guardian, you know, it has a bunch of members in it, some of which want to remain secret because they don't want to be seen associating with us in our ongoing effort to, quote unquote, protect the Middle East. We have the biggest and baddest Navy. Yeah, but don't you think that it should be an international issue, like a real one? Because it is. It's international maritime trade. A lot of the ships we protected have nothing to do with America, like not directly at least.
That drone probably cost $20,000 to manufacture. The people that fired it may have been a dozen people, none of them with graduate degrees from the Army War College. So you really have to go after decision makers. You have to have a whole of government responses. You know, it's got to be cyber warfare, classified covert action.
Vaush, suppose U.S. withdraws. Iranian state ideology is to spread a Shia caliphate. What happens when Iran starts to conquer Saudi Arabia? You're right. What happens if they start to... What if they form a caliph and then riding upon the backs of a fleet of unicorns, they sail across the sea and invade us directly, you know? Through the might of Allah. Their blades will meet our necks effortlessly. You know, like sure, why not, right? Like Muhammad will return from heaven and lead a glorious crusade again. Like no, they're not going to do that. Why would they do that? Think. Why would they do that? Why? Think. Saudi Arabia, effectively head of OPEC, okay, centerpiece of global fossil fuel shipping. Do you realize what would happen to Iran? Physically, what would happen to Iran if they threatened the kind of shit Saudi Arabia moves around? The physical process that I am referring to is atomization. The last time a leader in the Middle East tried this, what was it? Saddam Hussein invading Kuwait. Do you know what we did to the Iraqi army? They got atomized. The coalition broke them down. It was ridiculously one-sided. Why would Iran invade Saudi Arabia? What, their government says they're going to form a caliphate? Well, I guess because they're all barbarians to you. Yeah, I guess they will do that. Never mind the fact that basically every country has on their books a military doctrine that involves some kind of psychotic shit. No, I'm sure they really will do that, you know? That's it. Even though America is capable of deploying troops anywhere in the world in a matter of days, I'm sure they're just waiting for America to withdraw from the Middle East. So then finally, the multi-years long process of taking over Saudi Arabia, a very wealthy and internationally connected country, can begin. Just like, I don't blame you guys for not all being, you know, wizards or whatever. That's fine. But like the logical failings consistently, it seems, draw from a pre-existing assumption you have that the people of Iran are less than us. And that does bother me a little bit, because the belief that the Iranian people are barbarous or uncivilized or whatever the fuck else is the reason the Middle East is destabilized the way it is. If we had just done diplomacy with Iran, we wouldn't be in this situation. If we had treated them like a regular country, which they are, by the way, oh, they're a religious autocracy. So are a lot of countries. It means you don't do diplomacy with them? We do diplomacy with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, they chop up American citizens, and we don't even mention it. That's a write-off for us. You know, come on. Isn't that bad though? No, it's not bad to do diplomacy with countries that are dictatorships. You have to. What? Because if you don't, the only thing you can do with them is invade. Didn't George Bush say we don't do diplomacy with evil or something like that? No, you're thinking of the average VGG chatter. Sorry, you're misattributing that quote, actually. That's from the median person here right now watching. I think people hear appeasement when we say diplomacy because you're all John McCain. That's John McCain brain right there. Diplomacy, you mean letting them get what they want? That's John McCain brain right there. John McCain was actually right about Russia. We f***ed up with Russia like a long time ago. Why do you think your audience is like this? Because there are liberals in it. And also because I often disagree with people on the left. That gives a lot of the dumb in my community license to think, actually, what if liberals have been right about everything, you know? Wow, lefties often have bad foreign policy opinions. Let me just go back to 2001 to grab the median liberal opinion on foreign policy. That must be a sensible one. It comes across so civil, so informed. Look at how all the people who make these arguments, they're wearing suits, they go on CNN.
Economic constraints as well as military power. We got to up the game. You know, I hope we're going to see U.S. Air Force heavy bombers going after fixed installations, not a targeted 500-pound JDAM, but 100 munitions striking a target to try and stun these people and have them change their ways.
To be fair, Vaush, your foreign policy takes oscillate between pro-America and anti-America. Yeah, because I'm not a infant whose political positions are just, well, am I pro or against country? I have broader moral positions. Like, yeah, obviously, that's the real difference, you know? I say stuff that's anti-American and people are like, oh man, anti-America, let's go, woo! And then I say stuff that in some instances I agree with an American narrative and people are like, whoa, either they're like, oh, you've betrayed the cause, or they're like, ah, yes, of course, in reality, the pro-American side was always the correct side. You know, you have to appeal to broader moral considerations because you're not going to get anywhere if you just oscillate back. It's politics is just team sports to you at that point. Vaush, liberals can also be the rational liberal. From your posts, the only thing I know for absolute sure is that liberals can be fucking annoying. All right, you're taking a break. Stop being a liberal. I'm not joking. When I get angry at liberals, you guys think that it's in this like funny haha, like, oh, the leftist has to reify the fact that he's not, like he has to reinforce the idea that he's not one. No, when I get mad at you guys, it's because you guys are drifting ever closer to the great enemy, the fascist, all right? You think you're better than them? Most of the time you are. But sometimes you pivot like crazy, especially with foreign policy. You think it's a joke? Like, oh, casually, like Middle Eastern interventionism? Oh, yeah, no. Oh, let's just decades of instability, millions dead through starvation, invasion, like martial forces, militia groups, insurgency, or whatever else. It's not a joke. It's not like cute or whatever to be like randomly, you know, like, it's, you know, liberal attitude on this. It's like, it's not funny to me. And if you're going to be a liberal about something, why Middle East intervention? Why the thing that works less than any other thing? You could be defending so many other liberal ideas that are less retarded than this. Like, this is the worst thing for you to die on a hill for. Who wants to intervene in the Middle East? I see you've missed the past hour of stream. Do you really think it's most of your audience? No, I don't think it's most of my audience. It really makes me wonder, if Russia was a non-nuclear nation, how many people in my community would think, unironically, that a counter-invasion of Russia and an occupation would be a good way of solving the problems in that country? I have a feeling that a lot of them would be, because you're all amped up with the Ukraine war, and you think like, oh, well, the only reason we don't do that is because they have nukes. Like, we can't do that. But if we could do that...
The United States has now responded to the deaths of 3 American soldiers in Jordan. The Pentagon conducting more than 85 airstrikes on 3 sites in Iraq and 4 sites in Syria. The strikes targeted proxy militias and Iranian Quds forces outside of Iran, hitting more than half a dozen facilities, including command and control operations, intelligence...
Wait, Vaush, why couldn't we kill Putin? I wouldn't necessarily have an issue with forced regime change in some case. No, actually, I think I would. Because the only reason I think regime change is even on the table is because it's a nuclear nation. If Russia wasn't a nuclear nation, there wouldn't be any reason to think that would be like that is like such a last resort thing. And I said it about Israel because Israel is also a nuclear nation. But in the absence of nukes, I would never advocate for that.
Centers, weapons storage sites, and supply chain facilities. Sites 2 U.S. officials tell NBC News are directly linked to the drone attack in Jordan. This will also not be a one-day affair. The U.S. says the response will be phased in a campaign that could last for weeks. Quote, this is the start of these actions. They will unfold at times and places of our choosing, said Secretary of Defense Austin in a statement. The question now is not only how does Iran respond, but how do our allies in the region react? It is delicate. The president and his top officials have repeatedly said they do not want a war with Iran, and they don't want to be dragged into a larger Middle East conflict. Can they avoid it? Iraq was already angry about U.S. airstrikes against Iranian-backed groups there last week, with a spokesperson for the Iraqi prime minister calling it a violation of sovereignty.
Why are we acting like Iran isn't a nuclear state? Because Iran isn't a nuclear state. That's the reason why we don't act that way. They don't have nukes.
Undermines years of cooperation. What do the Iraqis say now? And why does the U.S. still have such a large presence there in the first place? We should also note the timing. These strikes were launched less than 2 hours after President Biden welcomed home the remains of 3 American soldiers at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware.
God, he's so old. 4 more years, guys. Jesus Christ. His face is slowing off his skull.
In a statement released just last hour, the president said the United States does not seek conflict in the Middle East or anywhere else in the world. But let all those who might seek to do us harm know this: if you harm an American, we will respond. We start tonight with correspondents at the White House, the Pentagon, and on the ground in Iraq. Kelly O'Donnell, you just got off a call with the National Security Council. Tell me what they told you.
Well, part of what we're learning is that this operation expanded over about a 30-minute period, and we're told that all of the U.S. aircraft are now safely back out of harm's way. They believe that their initial assessments that they were able to strike the targets they set out to strike, and when daylight comes in Iraq and Syria and where these operations were carried out, they will have a better opportunity then to do full...
Apparently just today, Iran kicked off construction on a nuclear power plant. Neat.
Battle damage assessments. That includes a video component, and I'm told that there will be some determination about whether any of the strikes that are captured on the airplane video and so forth, if any of that can be made public, and they committed to some transparency on that. What they would not say is exactly what comes next, except there will be more operations. They did acknowledge that weather was a significant factor in the timing of what took place tonight. They talked about the president being updated.
Is Trump even going to be worse than Biden at this point? Oh, no, yeah, no, trust me for sure. Trump would 100% either attack Iran with strikes or talk about how we need to immediately attack Iran with strikes. Yeah, when it comes to antagonizing with Iran, Trump has always been really bad. A big part of this is that Trump is the most corrupt president ever, I guess, and he is heavily bought by the Saudis. And the Saudis, of course, have quite a bit of beef with Iran.
Throughout the plans of the operation, and they feel good about how they were able to target the types of facilities that they argue are directly related to the kinds of strikes that were bringing danger and ultimately lethal consequences for American soldiers. That happened, of course, in Jordan Sunday and cost 3 American lives and dozens more injured. So that was the event that struck this into this phase of operation. Tonight, our sense is that the activity for this evening is concluded based on the officials saying that the aircraft are out of harm's way. When the next type of strikes will take place, we don't have a sense. There were a lot of questions asked about that, as you might imagine, and they could not get into those details, not wanting to be ahead of the program, if you will. I also asked about cyber components to this. They would not engage on that at this point, instead focused on the specific operations. They did tell us they alerted the government of Iraq in advance that the U.S.
I was looking for this from the Tehran Times. Iran's response to possible threats, decisive and urgent. So I guess these are English translations of statements made by Iranian officials. An event that the United States initially turned into a cause to accuse Iran of supporting the offensive groups, and then made some American senators and media speak reaction against Iran. Despite the fact that Iraqi Islamic resistance groups claimed responsibility for this attack, in response to this attack, Biden directly pointed out the name of Iran as a supporter of the resistance groups. Well, they are, of course. Iran rejected the accusations. Iran is talking about the necessity of the forced and immediate withdrawal of Americans from the West Asia region. The existing order in the world is going through its period of decline, and the formation of a new world order requires a valid and comprehensive discourse. And this is the Islamic Republic of Iran, which has a strong, credible, comprehensive, and global discourse under the title, The Advocacy of Justice and Resistance Discourse Against the System of Domination in Order to Confront the Existing Oppressive System. I wonder how much of this is translation gibberish. Biden had promised to return to the nuclear deal with Iran if he won the election. Not only did Biden not return to the JCPOA in his 4 years as president, he continued the sanctions against Iran during the Trump era. Biden is accused by Republicans not pressuring Iran as he should during his presidency followed Trump's policy. Okay. A lot of that is translation gibberish.
U.S. would be flying into their territory and hitting these strikes that have the Iranian influence associated with the Houthis and the specific group that they believe is responsible for the kind of drone activity that cost American lives. So we're getting a lot of detail and
This kind of sounds like Japan in the 1930s suing about Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere. Do you only say that because they said Asia in it? I don't think that Iran wants to like conquer all the Middle East or any bullshit like that. The only like real military aggression I could see would be in eastern Syria and portions of Iraq. Though I feel like they might be more likely to make Iraq kind of like their Belarus, you know, like effectively just a vassal state.
The big picture here is that the U.S. wanted to take out capabilities without going inside Iran and to send a very powerful signal. There will be more to learn as they are able to gain additional information and more operations to come. But that's an initial snapshot of what we're learning from officials just after this operation concluded.
I want to get Keir's reaction on Iraq, but first one more to you, Kelly O'Donnell. Let me ask you about the anticipation. What does the White House believe will happen next?
Well, I think there is a sense that with the military's assessment about what strikes, damage caused by them, what capabilities have been removed from the battlefield, if you will, what then come from this, like what other needed targets have to be next in the crosshairs. We don't know the duration. We just know that it is intended to be a multi-part process. And they really avoided talking about timing and so forth for all the obvious reasons that we want to be responsible about not forecasting military operations too far in advance beyond what the U.S. Wants to say. This remains a U.S. Operation, not an allied operation that we had seen in other kinds of defensive moves that have been happening in that region. So expect that over a period of time, we will get more indications of when they're ready to move. It was notable that the officials talked about favorable weather. And so those kinds of conditions loom very large. So we expect battle damage assessments after daylight. We expect an assessment of video. We expect to have a better sense of
well, setting that out for you there, you know, munitions, drones, the kinds of facilities that these Iranian-backed proxies, and in fact the Iranian Republican Guard themselves have been using to target U.S. bases and even attempting to supply groups like Hezbollah and targeting Israel. So we know that aspect of it, but we don't know yet exactly what was hit. Now, we have so what you have to rely on are the kinds of regional reports that we're hearing. So in Anbar province here in Iraq, we are hearing that there were explosions there and that it's in a place where the group Kataib Hezbollah is known to have an encampment now. Kataib Hezbollah is the group that is accused of carrying out that drone attack at Tower 22 that killed those 3 U.S. service members. But then, too, in Anbar province, we're hearing that a site that is belongs to the popular mobilized.
Iran can make fissile material for a bomb in about 12 days, U.S. official. I don't know if I believe that. Top U.S. Defense Department officials said on Tuesday, down from the estimated 1 year it will have taken while the 2015 Iran nuclear deal was in effect. A bomb of what size? This is an older article, guys. This is from about a year ago. While U.S. officials say Iran has grown closer to producing fissile material, they don't believe it's mastered the technology to actually build a bomb. Dude, what? What incoherent horse shit is this? What? It's not hard to make a bomb if you have the materials. We made it like 100 years ago. It's like you could. This is more like savagery bullshit. Okay, Iran is a modern industrialized state. They can make a bomb, I don't think they could make enough fissile material for one in 12 days unless the bomb would be like, I don't know, 1 kiloton or something, you know? You're just wrong, I'm sorry, look into it. On what? Research it? What? Research what? What do you, what? Their breakout time? How quickly they could make a bomb? I mean, again, it depends on the size of the bomb. To be clear, you're now concerned that Iran will nuke us? No, I never said that. I mostly think it's weird to say that they haven't mastered the technology to actually build a or build a bomb. I'm sorry, that's just so weird. You know, I've built a bar before.
Forces, another Iranian-backed kind of militia, was also hit. And if that is true, and again, I should just say, these are just regional reports. It's very difficult to confirm. It's now 2 a.m. here. If that is the case, the PMF is actually connected to the Iraqi military. So that's the kind of...
That's not weird. A nuke is different from a standard explosive. Iran has been trying to make nuclear weapons for decades. Do you seriously think they have advanced their enrichment process to the point that they could have a breakout time measured in weeks, but they haven't figured out how to make a nuclear weapon, something we built back in the 40s? You really think, like they put all this work into the enrichment side of things, tens of billions of dollars into that end of the equation, but at no point have they figured out how to replicate technology that is, at this point, essentially public knowledge. The difficulty with making a nuke is procuring highly enriched uranium, not like producing the thing that could set it off. Must be harder than it looks. Maybe for you. I could do it.
Challenge that you may see. Now, we do have an Iraqi response. This is from the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces here in Iraq. Bear in mind, Iraq will feel it has to complain about these strikes, but what it is saying is that cities along the Iraqi border areas are being subjected to airstrikes by United States aircraft as these strikes come at a time when Iraq is striving to ensure the stability of the region. These strikes, this statement from the Iraqi military says, constitute a violation of Iraqi sovereignty, an undermining of the efforts of the Iraqi government, and a threat that will drag Iraq and the region into unforeseen consequences. Now, we should just caveat that by pointing out that the Iraqi government isn't just a partner of the US, it's also a partner of Iran. So it looks both ways, if you like, and also we know that Iraq will inevitably complain about its sovereignty being violated. The question is whether it does anything about it, and by that I mean whether it leads to Iraq deciding to tell the US forces to leave. So far it hasn't done that, despite previous strikes here. Then just turning to Syria, what we are hearing, we heard really at the beginning of all this that there was explosions.
Wow, I wish Trump didn't the nuke deal. At this point, Iran getting nukes might be a good thing. It would be a pretty strong incentive for America to back off in the region, might lead to more stability. You think they're missing some kind of rocket technology that would prevent them from threatening ICBM capabilities? I don't think Iran has ICBMs. ICBMs are a lot more complicated than just regular missiles. Do you think it's possible that if Iran had nukes, we would be less trigger happy? Yeah, that's what I said. Maybe, yeah. I don't think they would just go hog wild and nuke Israel or whatever. That'd be pretty crazy. I mean, think about it. North Korea has been threatening to nuke South Korea and Japan and whatever for ages, and they haven't done it. And I think that North Korea is led a lot less rationally than Iran is.
In Mayadeen, that's in eastern Syria, again along the border there. Now, another group, Katie, which we know from the Syrian civil war, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, it is saying that 17 positions sheltering Iranian militias at Al-Mayadeen.
Iran already has ICBMs, and then you linked a Wikipedia article that describes this missile as a medium-range ballistic missile. Now, the acronym for medium range would be MRBM, whereas ICBM stands for Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. It goes to space. Like, an intercontinental ballistic missile is a different type of missile. It's not entirely atmospheric. It goes up into space, and then it drops down onto a target, which means it can hit anywhere. But this has a range of about 1,000 to 2,000 kilometers, which is less than intercontinental by a lot. There are physical limits to what you can do with a atmospheric rocket, you know? It doesn't need to go to space, you brainless rodent. Iran to China would be a different continent. You're incredible. You know that, right? Bro, I've got an intercontinental ballistic missile right here in my hand. Watch as I throw it across this national border from North America to South America. You see? Look, it crossed the continent off. Jesus Christ. Bro, I have thrown this bottle rocket from the Iberian Peninsula down south. It is now in Africa, okay? Iran and China are in the same continent too. Some people say Middle East and India are subcontinent, whatever. Inter-subcontinental ballistic missile. As long as it crosses the border from India to Pakistan, you've reached the ICBM.
That those have been struck. So that gives you a picture. And as you hear about the scale of this targeting, 85 sites according to 85 targets according to the US, I think one of the things to take away from that is a spotlight, and we've said it a number of times already tonight, a spotlight on just how embedded and how widespread the Iranian influence and its facilities are, particularly in Syria, but also here in Iraq. This has been allowed to happen, if you like, over a number of years.
Vaush, Iran launched 3 satellites. The technology for launching satellites is not the same as the technology for an ICBM. They're different. They're different things.
They have taken advantage, just for example, of the terrible earthquake that you'll remember a short time, not long ago. The Iranians used that as an opportunity.
No, it literally is. No, guys, it's not. There are differences. In order to build the materials necessary to launch a satellite, in most cases, unless Iran is doing literally everything in-house, which is possible, but it would surprise me. I could be wrong on that, I guess. Like, the parts that you need to specifically manufacture a satellite and the rocket that you need to launch into space are not the same as the part. Like, this would be like the argument that all guns are the same, or that, like, anything that reaches space is the same. ICBMs have more specific and significantly more expensive construction parameters because the tech of an ICBM is just different from that of a satellite. I think a lot of it has to do with the secondary rocketry systems, if I remember. Like, if you launch a satellite, you have the primary delivery mechanism sort of launch the satellite or the probe or whatever into its preferred orbit, and then it does like correctional stuff with the fuel that it has on board. But with an ICBM, there's like a lot more fuel needed for the second stage because you still have to do redirection stuff after it's already in space because okay, wait, I think I remember now because I've read about this before. The difference is when you're firing a rocket to set a satellite into space, you know the orbit the satellite is meant to go on, and you're firing it at the right time for it to enter that orbit. And also, there are specific requirements for the orbits that satellites follow around Earth, depending on whether like low orbit or high orbit, whereas ICBMs theoretically have to target anywhere, right? So you can't just have something that works under the best conditions at the right time to a specific set of orbits. You need something that literally, like, up in space, big heavy payload, anywhere on Earth, anytime, let's go. Which is definitely like a different... Like, the whole point of an ICBM is that it's supposed to be able to come down pretty quickly. You know, if it just hovered up in space for a while waiting, it wouldn't be a very good ICBM. That's my understanding of it. Anyway, having the ability to launch satellites definitely doesn't mean you have ICBMs. They could build them. It would be expensive, though. Why not just put a missile on a plane? They can go anywhere. What you're describing is called a jet. They do put missiles on those. Iran has demonstrated grit and determination in mastering nuclear technology. The time it would now need to build atomic weapons may be too short for the West's comfort. A nuclear-capable Tehran could further disrupt the Middle East, or possibly make it more stable. I think you have that backwards. If you can put spacecraft into orbit, then definitionally you have the ability to launch an ICBM. No, that's not true. No, there's differences. Open KSP and explain. Iran has the ability to make supersonic missiles, apparently. I could do that. You mean hypersonic? Does hypersonic even mean anything, or is this one of those stupid LARP terms? Like, either it goes faster than the speed of sound or it doesn't. Over Mach 5? Okay. Tehran is also assumed to be working on long-range ballistic missiles under the guise of a civilian space program currently used for launching satellites. Wait, why is everything so fucking sinister? oh, wow, the evil caliphate Iran is simultaneously developing rocketry technology for both civilian, spacefaring, and military purposes. The United States would never do that. We would never. That's not a thing that literally every country does. Notably, the tech used in the civilian space launch vehicle is remarkably similar to that used in ICBM. Ah, is that true? Ooh. CIA Director William Burns stated on the July 20th that Russian technicians are assisting with the Iranian space launch vehicle and missile program. Russian assistance could advance Iran's development of ICBM's military space program. Iran is developing its SLV space launch vehicles with lift capacity and boosters that could be capable of reaching ICBM ranges to reach the United States if they are reconfigured. Development of ICBMs because SLVs use similar technology. Look, I'm literally right. Even in this understandingwar.org, this State Department ass CIA training, smearing LSD on door handles, crazy. Even they're like, well, it could mean they're getting ICBM tech because they use similar tech. You know, yeah, there's a higher threshold. It's more difficult. ICBMs are literally easier. Orbit's really hard. That's not true. Sending a satellite to orbit is not hard. That's why we have 5 trillion. Even Elon Musk did it. You know? Here, I'll tell you, okay? Open up Kerbal Space Program and tell me which of them is easier for you to do from starting point, okay? From a new campaign, all right? Reaching orbit or constructing something that can go into space and then hit any target on the ground within like 1 hour, okay? So that's a rocket. It has to get into space and then have the fuel, the Delta V, necessary to strike any target on the planet Earth. Oh, within 30 minutes? Sorry, my bad. 30 minutes, okay? A specific target, and you need all the equipment necessary to calculate for the rotation, you know, all the correctional stuff. I'm telling you, I'm not doing this anymore. It's not like I know shit, okay? You know what I'm arguing off of right now? I'm arguing off of gut. That's what I got. That's what I got that you eggheads will never understand. I've got gut. I've got spirit. You'll know. If I say that building an ICBM is harder than launching a satellite into space, that's because it's true here. Right here. It's true right here. And that's all that matters. Your heart's on the left side. Yeah, my hands weren't in the right place. Military action against Iran's nuclear program is certainly a possibility at some point before Iran builds a bomb. Such a strike would create shockwaves across the region and around the world and cause turbulence in energy markets. While Iran's nuclear program could prove limited to peaceful electricity generation, Tehran's grand geopolitical ambition, its regional rivalries, expanding nuclear infrastructure and ballistic missile programs, and international adventurism regrettably point to an altogether different story. Consequently, the scenario is the more likely of the two presented. This is a deep state article, dude. What the GIS reports online? What am I looking at here? Regrettably, we have no choice but to invade Iran before they build... Hold on. Who are we? Founded in 2011 by HSH Prince Michael of Liechtenstein, provide business leaders, senior managers, and policymakers with genuine, relevant, scenario-based forecasts in geopolitics. Okay, these people are evil, all right? These people, these are literally like the Machiavellian lobbyists and policy wonks that are huddled behind the leaders as they make their decisions, you know? Holden Bloodfeast shit. Thanks. This image illustrates where GIS experts get the majority of their information and insights. Unlike other media, GIS has access to a wider range of information, thus generating a significant lead in knowledge. They're literally saying, like, yeah, we have a bunch of, like, State Department goons and like, you know, government officials giving you our narratives with secret... These guys. Oh, my God.
For example, to embed themselves more in Syria. So this, you could argue, has been a long time coming. The issue, though, is, and the Israelis have been saying that for a long time, the issue, though, is, will these strikes tonight and what comes next, will they actually shift Tehran's strategic approach, which is to try to put pressure on Israel and push America out of this region? I think there's a big question mark there, despite the strength of these strikes.
But their breakout period is like 0. I'm willing to bet their breakout period is pretty low, but it depends on what size of bomb you're talking about, right? Like, there is no fucking way if Iran wanted to present their first nuclear weapon to the world, it would be like a 10 kiloton weapon, right? Like, like if they were going to come out with a big nuclear, it would be like a, you know, something sort of relevantly large. I don't know what their breakout time, like I don't know how it scales up with like the amount or time needed. I don't even know if there's a directly proportional relationship between fissile material and the yield of the weapon, right? Like, is it literally 1-to-1, like twice the amount of fissile material, twice the yield, or is there like a scale up? I don't know exactly. It'd be in the kiloton range probably. Well, it wouldn't be megatons. That would be a bit excessive. What is breakout period? How long it takes for a country to make a nuke?
This is an NBC News
Little more.
special report. Here's Lester Holt.
Good day, everyone. We're coming on the air with breaking news. U.S. officials confirm that the U.S. has begun retaliatory strikes in the Middle East in response to the deadly attack that killed 3 American troops. The strikes come
also Iran racist as huh? Or their proxies? What's up with this? All reservists, and they were like army engineers and shit. Like, come on.
days after those service members were killed in a drone attack on a U.S. outpost in Jordan last weekend, marking the first.
They heard the Iranian official's statement on killing U.S. heroes, and so they try to lure out U.S. service members with like placard of Goku or like Naruto out there. Only the people who watch the good anime came out. All the white boys back in base, they stayed in because they didn't recognize those guys. They were all about. What's like a white boy anime from the early 2000s? Can you help me with this one? What's like, what would you make fun of somebody for? Would it have to be Death Note, right? That would be the thing that you would make the joke about, right? I would say Death Note, yeah. Samurai Champloo. What? Did you hear what I said? The white boy anime you'd make fun of them for. Okay, y'all are just saying shit. I'm going with Death Note, okay? SAO, that's not from the early aughts.
American deaths since the Israel-Hamas war began. Dozens of other troops were also injured in the attack as well. Today's news also comes hours after President Biden performed one of the most solemn duties of the presidency today, attending the dignified transfer of the fallen troops at Dover Air Force Base, honoring them before they are laid to rest.
This started carrying out a wave of retaliatory strikes in Iraq and Syria. It comes 5 days after a deadly drone attack launched by Iran-backed terror groups that killed 3 American soldiers. Today was the dignified transfer.
You went over why the U.S. is in Jordan, right? Dumb Twitter are pretending we were at war with Jordan. Oh, I'm sure like the median Twitter lefty thinks that we have like done a boots in the ground invasion of Syria. We've reinvaded Iraq, and hitherto unknown, a secret until today, we've also invaded Jordan. You know, that's probably like the median opinion, I imagine.
Of their remains. Let's go right to national security correspondent Jennifer Griffin. She's got a live update from the Pentagon. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Dana. Well, at 4 p.m. Eastern, the U.S. began carrying out airstrikes on 6 to 7 locations, I'm told, in both Iraq and Syria. U.S. Central Command just put out a statement in which they said that 85 targets had been struck at those different locations that were used by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. 125 munitions were dropped.
Is the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps both trains them and pays them. You know, it's kind of disingenuous. And then what is the point of our hitting the proxies?
Well, it's a very good question. And certainly this shell game that Iran has been playing in the Middle East by arming and supporting and training these proxies, whether it's in Lebanon with Hezbollah, whether it's these various groups in Syria and Iraq, whether it's the Houthis in Yemen, whether
She doesn't exactly look the type for a Fox News gig, but a check's a check, I guess. Yeah. I've always thought that, is this the pixie cut? No, the pixie cut's longer. I always thought this like very short haircut on chicks. Okay? You know what it says? It doesn't say anything about head. They give good hand jobs. That's the, I'm decoding all this for you. This is knowledge. My brothers in chat, now you know, they can use their hands because they do like pottery.
Hamas in the Gaza Strip. There is a common thread here, and it is Iran, and it is
women can't give good hand jobs. Typically, yes, but if you find one who can, that shit is crazy, you know? Especially because you're primed for disappointment, right? Like, head feels great, but just realistically, like, getting jerked off by someone else almost always feels worse than doing it yourself until it doesn't. And that's the surprise, because when you're getting head, you're like, oh, well, this is going to feel good. And then it does. But when they put their hand on your dick, it's like, well, all right. Like presumably at some point they would have had to touch my dick. That's fine. I guess I can live with this. And then it feels really good. And you're like, whoa, that's crazy. To be fair, a lot of men get a shit hand job. Well, they tend to do better for obvious reasons.
Iran, and the U.S. has not figured out a way to put enough pressure on Iran to make it painful enough for them to stop supporting these groups. And in fact, there are some who believe, and this is why it's a very delicate balancing act for the White House National Security Team as well as the Pentagon, is how not to get baited into a war with Iran, because some believe that's what Iran wants. Pressure on Iran. They're going to lose a lot of valuable property that their proxies have been using to torment and taunt U.S. bases for the last 3 months. The question one should ask is, what took so long? Of course, it's tragic that 3 Americans were killed, but the U.S. troops sitting in Iraq and Syria have been sitting ducks for months now.
Indeed. Jennifer Griffin, thank you so much. We want to get to Mike Tobin. He's in Israel and Tel Aviv.
If being in a military base means you're a sitting duck, maybe you shouldn't be there? What does that even mean? How have they been sitting ducks? They're in military bases. Modern warfare involves drone use. What facility could you put them in that would protect them from drones while they're just like chilling, Do we need to build bunkers all across the Middle East? Yeah, exactly. We put troops in a base near combat areas. What do you mean sitting ducks?
He's got the latest with reaction there, as I'm sure that they are on heightened alert as well.
No, they're always on heightened alert at this stage, Dana. And what I can really confirm for you right now are just some of the locations. We have a source inside of Iraq who says, indeed, there have been multiple targets struck in the area of Al-Qaim, which is the western border of Iraq, very near Syria. And this following reports throughout the day that the El Mayadeen, the Deir Azur area, the Abu Kamal area were all hit. And these are areas that are kind of near the...
leaving bomb bunkers all over the Middle East won't ever bite us in the ass. Yeah. The United States in 2037 cursing itself for not having the foresight to know you shouldn't build 600,000 indestructible concrete fortresses all across eastern Syria and northern Iraq. Ooh, we didn't think this one through when we left. Well, being a relative term, how rock, right? Within a few hundred miles, anything that's within drone range.
Some of those cities are just on the banks of the Euphrates River. Al-Qaim is immediately across the border. So a lot of the real estate, at least where a lot of the strikes have been concentrated, is not a whole lot of real estate concentrated into about a 60-mile area. We know that there were other strikes inside of Iraq. The U.S. confirming today that there were some 85 different targets hit by some 125 different munitions. And that is dramatically different from the early reports we heard that some 8 different targets were hit. We anticipated that the numbers would...
This isn't included in the video?
In that back.
Should have a war.
Judge, you and both General Kellogg brought up the instance with Donald Trump making a threat to the Taliban and then striking Soleimani and that backing off of power. What I would offer up is this. Donald Trump is an exception to the rule. Donald Trump is one of the reasons he was so hated by both the machine that exists within Washington, D.C. that is now gearing up for yet another war. Whether or not it was left or right, Republican or Democrat, there was enmity towards Donald Trump. And I think it's in part because it stood in the way of moments like this when you need some sobriety to say, if I'm connecting the dots correctly, we have presence scattered around this area for counterterrorism. Those targets then get hit. Then we now, too, I'm just listening to the conversation throughout this first 35 minutes, Greg. Then we have to go hit the people that hit us. And we live under this delusion that's just going to stop them. One big stop, and they're not going to. Of course, that's set against the backdrop of about 50 years of talk of regime change in Iran. And we have a great history of regime change. That's worked out really well in Afghanistan. Of course, now we're regime change in Afghanistan, and it feeds instability and chaos across the greater Middle East. Everywhere we go in to set stability, and before you know it, we've seeded the ground for more terrorism that comes back and hits us, which undercuts the original purpose of putting troops in the Middle East in the first place as counterterrorism. I just think we might need some sobriety before we fire up the war machine on this cycle that seems to always end up in America.
I am now a Republican. All right. It's happened. I've been pulled over. He cooked, and he's right. Yeah, Heil Trump.
Station chief Dan Hoffman. He's also a Fox News contributor. And I'm curious what you think about that leak from last night that came out from the administration.
Look at this. This guy looks like Jocko Willink. Jesus Christ. This guy looks like a mix of Jocko Willink and Mike Ehrmantraut.
Suggesting that Iran really had nothing,
And Rambo.
no idea that this was going on. And it was almost as if they were trying to give Iran cover, that they didn't know that they allow, as I said on Martha's show,
measures, Walter.
they let the kids have a kegger and then they pretended to know nothing about it.
Yeah, well, that's a distinction without a difference, because none of those proxy terrorist groups would exist without Iran's support. Iran provides them with military equipment, with all the...
That's not true. Keep in mind, by the way, the vast majority of these local insurgencies would almost certainly still be around, even if Iran wasn't backing them. Iran just gives them more resources, you know, because Iran wants to drive a bunch of wedges to destabilize American presence in the region and Israeli presence in the region. They would have fewer guns, to be sure, but the regional insurgencies are a product of very real and legitimate socioeconomic problems. You know, they're not like totally manufactured. You know, like Iran isn't just creating them.
Missiles that they need, with intelligence support, with financial support. And so Iran might not have told them when to strike, but Iran was certainly providing them with all of that support because
Qatar funds them too. Yeah, it's weird considering the weird relationship Saudi Arabia has had historically with a variety of terror acts and insurgency groups, including, you know, a big one over here in the States. But that never gets talked about. We would sooner invade Iraq, a country that had nothing to do with it, than mention it. It's almost like we're willing to give a pass to countries that give us oil, and the other ones can go fuck themselves. Like, we will permit any indignity from a nation that allows us to drive our gas guzzlers down these 27-lane highways outside of Houston, and we have to take our anger out on the other guys, you know? The Saudis and Qatar hate each other. Wait, am I mixing Qatar up with another country? Doesn't Qatar do the whole like slave state wait, hold on. The slave state like petrodollar fake country bullshit? Qatar is Shia, but yes. Oh, I'm not saying they're allies. I'm saying, was I thinking of the UAE? Oh, I might have been thinking of the UAE. So wait, is Qatar not a petro state? Wait, Qatar was the country that hosted the World Cup, right? And they had like the gay ban. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, the images that get shown of Qatar. Like, nations like this exist entirely for billionaire pedophiles to go there and be waited on by slaves. There's no way that's real. No, it is. If you don't care at all about building a real city that works for the people who live in it, you can build really wacky looking cities, you know? All the things that make cities look, you know, the way they do normally, that's a product of deliberate organic design that's meant to service the needs of the people who live there. But if you don't give a fuck and everything is built by slaves and you've got trillions in petrodollars to throw around, why not just make everything a gigantic tourist trap, you know? I do like this one, though. Look, it's a teapot or a carafe. What carafe? What's the term? Of like a big jug that's like kind of curvy and tall. Is that a carafe? Is that what it's called? Am I pronouncing it correctly? Carafe? Oh, okay, carafe. Gotcha. Petroleum and natural gas account for more than 70% of total government revenue, more than 60% of gross domestic product, and roughly 85% of export earnings. Okay, yeah, that I stand by what I originally said. I was mixing up Qatar and the UAE. However, Qatar is still a shithole slave state that floats on petrodollars. Okay, there we go. Okay, yeah, cool. Okay, there. All right. But thank you for correcting me.
because those groups intended to strike us. And let's just be clear, we are at war with Iran. It's a proxy.
What goes on in Oman? I have no idea. Not a single clue.
War right now, but there is a war going on. And it's happening because the Houthis, Lebanese Hezbollah, is targeting Israel. And remember that this all started 40 years ago when Hezbollah, the predecessor terrorist group to Hezbollah, launched an attack on the Marine barracks and then our embassy in Beirut. That's the way Iran operates. That's the way they conduct war.
All right. Anybody got a question for Dan Hoffman?
Dan, I'll follow up on what we talked about earlier. We talked about all these guys scattered around all these bases in Syria and Iraq that are the target of these attacks. What are they accomplishing, having a presence in Syria and Iraq?
Well, look, we've got a couple of interests, important national security interests in the Middle East. One is freedom of navigation.
I knew someone
There's
from
a lot of trade that
Oman once said he had Discord became illegal because the government wanted a monopoly on communication platforms. I think something similar actually happened in Lebanon, where the government heavily restricted internal communication because they didn't want they wanted to like disconnect themselves from Hezbollah in the southern portion of the country. And as a consequence, everyone used WhatsApp, and the government didn't like that everyone just got to use WhatsApp, thus bypassing all of the previous systems by which they could monetize the telecommunications network. So they imposed like the highest, it was like a tax or something. I don't know how it was applied, but for a while, maybe even still to this day in Lebanon, like using WhatsApp, which was the only way people could really talk, cost a lot of money. Yeah, it's interesting.
It happens through the Red Sea. And then in Syria and Iraq, very small numbers of U.S. troops, 2,500 in Iraq, just a few hundred in Syria. They're there to do counterterrorism operations. They're not there to bring democracy to the Middle East. They're not there to build girls' schools, but they are there to protect us here at home because there are terrorists.
Trump gave Saudi Arabia permission to invade Qatar, but Rex Tillerson stopped it, so Saudi Arabia settled on blockading them, instead of which forced Qatar to rely even more on Iran. Biden put a stop to the blockade. I think we should have let Saudi Arabia invade Qatar, because it would have been funny, mostly. Yeah, you're right, it led to a huge protest. Yeah, the WhatsApp tax. Lebanon's October 2019 protests weren't just about the WhatsApp tax. That's wild. Lebanon is such a small country, man. So tiny. We need to return with a V to every human living in some kind of like incredibly small. We need to Holy Roman Empirify all of humanity, where everyone lives in a county of like 117 people, controlled by somebody with a 16-syllable name, and you know everyone, yeah, every county and nation. And if you want to travel more than like 20 miles in a straight line, you have to bring a purse full of coin to pay all the toll collectors. I think that would be good.
Al-Qaeda and ISIS terrorists there, and if we don't target them way out there, left of boom, then they're going to target us in the region and potentially here.
Where would
at
the
home.
center of power
Look,
be?
I served in those places. I served in Iraq for a year. I served in South Asia as a station chief for 2 years. We were always perfectly fine serving in harm's way as long as we had the right equipment to keep us as safe as possible, as well as the right policy. And that's what has been lacking over the past, certainly, few months, where 160 plus strikes against our people, and we've lost escalation dominance to Iran.
Escalation dominance. A term, if ever I have heard one. I mean, you don't, like, it's no surprise looking at this guy that he thirsts for blood, you know?
You know, Dan, Janine Pirro here. The whole idea of our policy, you know, of allowing how many, I think it's like 80 or 100 who were injured, some with traumatic brain injuries in Iraq and Syria before this last attack, where 3 were killed and 40 injured. How much influence has the commercial interference of shipping had on the American policy? I mean, because it's almost like you see the commercial. Maersk apparently is not.
Sorry, holding down click makes it fast forward now, but I tend to hold click when I'm pausing anyway. I need to get over that. What is the relationship between this? Why she was just like, we allow Iran to injure our service members, and then randomly pivots to maritime trade?
Going through the Red Sea. Now they're going around the Cape of Africa. I mean, do you see policy changing when it comes to commercial vessels and countries getting a little more aggressive then, as opposed to when Americans are injured? Because I'm not convinced this administration is so concerned about Americans when we allowed 160 attacks on our servicemen in Syria and Iraq.
I think we should have nuked Iran the first time a U.S. service member tripped over their own dick and got a concussion from hitting the corner of a table. You know, I think that we should glass Tehran every time a U.S. service member gets syphilis from underage, like a local that they wandered off base to find. You know, for every crime committed to us, 1 billion times as much blood must be harvested from the other side. I think we should end the world if it means we get to spend just another day occupying military bases in the Middle East. You know, I don't give a shit about anything anymore. I just want to smell burning flesh one more time before I die.
Well, I'm sure the administration, and I'm sure that that those who are serving in the administration are very concerned about U.S. servicemen and women and others who are serving in harm's way. I think they're also concerned, overriding concern for them is not to escalate and result in a war with Iran. And I think
Why are you quoting the IDF rules of engagement? Yeah, I'm just reading them out loud from like a document that I've printed. I actually, normally when people say that this is getting boring, I get annoyed at them, but I think I agree. Yeah. It's already a 2-hour-long segment. It's all a segment. I think my positions on this are pretty clear at this point. I'm not going to spend time repeating all of them for a summary at the end. This is much ado about nothing, if we're honest. It's not. I'm sorry. This is not a nothing ever happens kind of deal. The constant back and forth antagonism with Iran is a huge problem, and it's yeah.